You don't want to know what's inside this fridge, just trust me. And please, please, please be warned, this is a hugely disturbing case. This case began in February 2010 when authorities in West Philadelphia received a phone call. And I know you want to sing, because so do I. The clinic in question belonged to Dr. Kermit, and yes, that's his real name. They thought that he was running an illegal pharmacy from the clinic, but what was actually going on behind closed doors was so much worse than anyone could ever have imagined. Now, Dr. Kermit started out with good intentions. He was incredibly intelligent, he was very smart. After completing medical school, he dedicated his life to helping those in need. These were people in poverty, teenagers struggling with substance abuse issues, refugees, people who just had no money. He was pro-choice, but as we will dive into, some of his practices were just absolutely horrifying. This man really did want to help underprivileged people, like I said, and was often going against in the initial stages like best practice due to trying to help people who were desperate. He would just totally go against common sense. In a lot of instances, pregnant women would just show up at the clinic very, very pregnant and very desperate, and he would go against regularly the 24-week limit. And he actually started raking in the money doing this. Word was getting round that he would perform operations on people way past the legal limits, and he was just getting these people in as business. On some days, he was even reportedly making as much as $15,000 doing this. It made absolutely no sense though if you saw the state of the clinic. There was blood everywhere. Things were like blood stained. There was broken equipment, and I don't know if you're ready for the next bit. Stuffed inside of juice cartons and cat food containers were fetuses. Dozens of hands, feet, you name it. It begs belief. I don't understand how things could have got so horrific. He was found to have been using unqualified staff. These were people who were not properly medically trained. And during the police investigation into this clinic, investigators realized that this doctor had been getting his employees to murder babies after they'd been born alive. I'm honestly just not going to go into any further detail than that. You can find it online, but I just really feel it's just so wildly sickening. The women were looked after in absolutely filthy, disgusting, unsanitary conditions. They were regularly sedated and given medication by untrained staff. Dr. Kermit had also been apparently prescribing controlled medications to people who just simply didn't need them. He was also charging them an absolute bloody fortune. Now, he argued that he was helping people, and I do think he started to try and help people, but for some reason it spiraled way out of control, and honestly, he just turned evil. He was ultimately convicted of murdering 3 babies, as well as the involuntary manslaughter of a patient who died under his care because she was given a lethal dose of a sedative. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
She posted a TikTok praising her husband, and only days later he would murder her. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is Jennifer Sheffield. On the 10th of December 2024, 30-year-old Jennifer uploaded a TikTok talking about her ongoing divorce from her soon-to-be ex-husband, 40-year-old Brandon Sheffield. Within the TikTok, she praises Brandon. She describes him as incredible, and she praises how civil the entire thing is going.
I am in the middle of a divorce. My husband is being incredible though. Everything is good. It is a very civil divorce with our daughter in mind, and I really appreciate that.
She asks for tips, and she's been very open and very vulnerable.
So I've never done this before. I've never been on my own before. So if you have any tips, saving money, making money, anything like that, like I would really appreciate it. Like, you know, yeah, if you just have any tips, like I would really appreciate it, because like I'm a little scared right now.
She Jennifer was an avid poster on TikTok, sharing vlogs, sharing cleaning videos, sharing motivational talks. However, she would have no idea that the TikTok that she posted on the 10th of December would be her final one. On the 28th of December 2024, only 3 days after Christmas, police in Brandon, Mississippi would receive a concerned phone call. Reports state that family members of Jennifer arrived to the couple's home on Toulon Street after they couldn't get in touch with Jennifer, and when they arrived, they saw what is being described as, quote, obvious signs of foul play, and so they quickly contacted the police and requested a welfare check. When officers arrived, they would discover the bodies of Jennifer and Brandon Sheffield, both of them being dead from gunshot wounds. Jennifer had been shot by Brandon before he turned the gun on himself. Some reports state that at least one of their 2 children were in the home at the time of the murder. The news of this murder came as an entire shock to many people who knew Brandon. People would say that he wasn't a violent person and he was a devoted father who loved his family. But this just proves that you never really know anyone. At the time of her murder, Jennifer was on the pathway to becoming a doctor. Caring in nature, she enrolled at the Mississippi College to study Masters of Medical Science. She is described as a beautiful, radiant woman, a devoted mother, wife, and friend.
She was filming a TikTok right before she lost her life. The 24-year-old Irina Gluzanova was born on February 13th of 2000 and was from Moscow, Russia. Irina had graduated from the Russian Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, but on her free time she was a content creator and loved filming videos. She had traveled to Tbilisi, Georgia to go visit her friends. On September 27th of 2024, Irina was walking with her friend through First Republic Square. She was dancing and singing to the song called For the Last Time while her friend was filming her. Irina failed to notice the edge of an underpass and fell into it backwards. She was taken to the hospital with numerous fractures, including the base of her skull, and unfortunately she died at the hospital without ever gaining consciousness. A memorial was organized with flowers in memory of Irina at the location she had fell. Many locals had saw Irina's video and stated that the underpass was very dangerous because there was no fence and they were scared that this was going to happen to someone again. Later on, a barrier was installed where Irina had fell with hopes that this won't happen again.
A toddler just strolled through A&E with a knife through her head. The mum isn't even holding her, it's so bizarre. The mum is just like casually walking along holding her hand. It's the most bizarre thing I've seen all year. It was August 2025 in southwest China when an insane incident came to light. The video basically started going round on social media because it's just the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. The shocking video showed a 3-year-old little girl with a 6-inch knife stuck in her head. Mum and the daughter are just like casually walking through the hospital. The mum's not even like holding the child. She's making her walk along and the knife stuck out of her head, and honestly it looks like a Halloween costume. The mum was apparently just talking calmly to the little girl and the little girl didn't seem fazed in the slightest. The little girl's mum reportedly told the hospital staff that basically she was like changing the bed sheets in the bedroom, and as she shook the sheets out, a knife just happened to like fly at her daughter and just stick in her head. She said she tried to get the knife out and couldn't, so then decided to go to the hospital. But obviously I don't even know if you should take a knife out of the head if it's wedged in, like because of the risk of bleeding. Anyway, instead of ringing an ambulance, she just took her there herself. Medical staff did, thank God, remove the knife, and the girl is said to be stable in hospital and obviously just being monitored. And police have just apparently ruled this as like an accident, and they said that there was no criminal intent. Which, okay, that may be the case, but I'm pretty sure in cases like this, it's always better to be safe than sorry. I remember my mum telling me that when she was a baby, my nan actually fell down the stairs with her in her arms, and they were both obviously like bruised and battered, so they went to hospital, and the hospital staff got social services involved just to check, just to make sure everything's okay at home and the story is the truth. I just think it's always better to be safe than sorry. Like, we should be investigating this.
He was the reason she went missing and then helped her mom go search for her. 15-year-old Elizabeth Eden was a spunky teenager who loved her makeup, hair, and cell phone. Since she was a teenager now, she wanted to take on more responsibility, so she accepted a babysitting job with a family that her mom knew. Elizabeth wanted to take this job so she could save up enough money for a nice birthday gift for her older brother. On January 11th of 2011, Elizabeth was dropped off at a hotel to watch the children of the Salinas family. They were staying at a hotel temporarily while they were looking at homes to buy. Elizabeth was only going to be babysitting for a few hours and then was going to be dropped off at midnight by the Salinas family. Instead of Elizabeth showing up at her home, Humberto Salinas Jr., also referred to as Bert, was the one to show up at her home. He showed up with Elizabeth's purse, stating that she had left it back at their hotel room after he had just dropped her off 15 minutes before. Elizabeth's mother, Virginia, grabbed the purse, but she was confused because Elizabeth never made it home. Virginia immediately contacted authorities to report Elizabeth as missing, and Bert stood by her side to possibly help with the search. Once police arrived, they came up with the idea that maybe Elizabeth just ran away and just to wait 24 hours before filing a missing persons report. Deep down, Virginia knew that Elizabeth wouldn't run away without her purse and phone. The next morning, there was still no sign of Elizabeth, so Virginia called the police to report her as missing. From there, they retraced her steps, being with Bert and his family, and they wanted a detailed interview with him. According to Bert, Elizabeth was watching his children while him and his wife went to go play bingo. Then around 1:30 a.m. he went to go drop off Elizabeth, and when he was on his way back to his hotel room, he noticed that Elizabeth left her purse behind, so he went back to her house to drop it off, and that is when Virginia noticed that Elizabeth was missing. At first, Bert's story seemed like he was being very truthful, and he had even helped Virginia put missing posters of Elizabeth around the town. However, once surveillance footage inside of the hotel was viewed, it was a completely different story. As police were watching this footage, it revealed that around 10:45 p.m., Bert was walking back to his hotel room where Elizabeth was watching his children. About an hour later, Elizabeth is seen running out of the hotel room with her purse. Seconds later, Bert follows right behind her and brings her back to that hotel room. 8 minutes later, Bert and Elizabeth are seen leaving the hotel room once again and walking down the hallway. Suddenly, Elizabeth is seen trying to go into a different direction, trying to get away from Bert, but he overpowers her and forces her to walk to the parking lot. Investigators brought in Bert for another interrogation, and he stated that right after he dropped her off, he didn't see her again, but once he found out that they had video footage, he sat completely silent. Tears started falling down from his face as soon as he stated that he took her life by strangling her. He cooperated with investigators and led them to her decomposed body. On April 5th of 2012, Bert pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This 13-year-old girl ended her own life because of 4 girls who severely bullied and harassed her, along with dealing with the trauma of sexual assault all by herself. This story did make me cry a lot, so do not blame me if you are emotional too. Heather Wyatt had peeked inside her daughter's bedroom and saw Aubrey's discolored legs dangling in front of her window. In Heather's video, she details her running towards Abby, grabbing her by the waist, lifting her up, hoping to loosen the rope around her neck, desperately checking for any sign of life, but it was already too late. Taylor was in her room when she heard her mom scream from the deepest parts of her soul. When she noticed the room that it was coming from, Taylor ran and sees the sight that'll haunt any big sister for the rest of their life. Heather is holding Aubrey so tight, that way she does not have to deal with letting her go, just screaming and praying to open her eyes.
I immediately saw her legs and they were discolored. So I run to her and I grab under her bottom and lip and just started screaming. Said I was screaming for Taylor to get a knife to cut her sister down. So I'm holding her up so that the rope would not cut into her throat anymore.
Aubrey Wyatt suffered years of harassment fighting a mental battle against 4 girls who tormented her mentally, physically, and emotionally. Ava Chase, Parker Green, Ava Hembry, and most importantly, Molly Morbid bullied Aubrey so badly, they quite literally made her tired of living. Even after Aubrey's passing, they still tormented her and posted this picture on their Snapchat stories. It can honestly speak for itself. These are messages that she would send to her mom. You can pause to read them. Her constantly complaining about the way Molly and the other girls treat her. Even messages of these girls cyberbullying Aubrey. I've been bullied and harassed myself, but as a child, it truly makes you question if the space that you're taking up in this world is worth it. Aubrey's mom, her sister, her whole family, words cannot express the heartbreaking pain they must have gone through and still do, knowing that this could have been prevented if only others loved Aubrey the same way they loved Aubrey. Aubrey was at a baseball game with some friends, but for some reason, her happiness just always got cut short. She told her mom that she got sexually assaulted on school grounds during this baseball game, but they did nothing. No investigation, no further questioning, no effort into helping Aubrey feel reassured and safe in her own school. That must have been so frustrating as a mother, knowing that your daughter has been taken advantage of and nobody is listening. I did learn that Molly Nobit's father is actually a superintendent at the school that they go to, for which I wouldn't doubt if that played a huge role in the lack of support that Aubrey got from the school. Probably because he thinks his daughter is not a bully.
And you were 15. Vanessa, you didn't ask for that. You were just trying to go to school.
After Aubrey's passing, the 4 girls who bullied her were leaked on the internet, exposing a lot of personal information like addresses, so they sue Heather, Aubrey's mom. I don't know, it seems a little reversed to me. Due to the power that Molly's family had and the other girls, Heather was actually banned from using any of her platforms. The same platforms that she uses to advocate for bullying and sharing Aubrey's story.
When my voice was shut off, the fact that you guys were like, no, we will be her voice, put me aside. You guys fought for my baby when I couldn't.
The judge did lift the ban, but she has many restrictions on what she is and is not allowed to post. Heather is not allowed to make any statements implying that anybody involved in her case bullied her or that the girls or their parents had any part of her death. Child Protective Services did get involved with Aubrey's family and the families of her bullies because of the amount of harassment they were receiving, including leaked home addresses, cyberbullying, death threats, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Please remember, you are no better than a bully if you choose to hurt back. Only God knows the true pain that was inflicted on Aubrey, and karma will take its course. As always, be safe out there.
The Hello Kitty murder case is a case that haunts us. Please be warned that this is a very graphic case. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the sadistic torture and murder of Fan Man-Yi. In May 1999, a 14-year-old girl would walk into a police station in Hong Kong. She physically looked distressed, she was very clearly upset, and she looked like she hadn't been sleeping. This young girl told the police officers that she was being tormented by a ghost. The ghost of a woman who was covered in blood was haunting her. Initially, the police kind of brushed off what she was saying and were only really half listening to her story. They were police officers, not ghost hunters. However, she got their full attention when she revealed that the ghost that was haunting her was the ghost of a woman who she helped to kill. A woman named Fan Man-Yi. Fan Man-Yi was a 23-year-old mother of 1. She had a very difficult upbringing, being abandoned by both of her parents. She was raised in a girls' home where she was kicked out at 16 and left to fend for herself. Fan would begin work in the streets of Hong Kong as a sex worker in order to make money to try and get by, and she would eventually develop a drug addiction. While working in a brothel, she would become acquainted to 34-year-old Chan Man Lok, who was a pimp, a drug dealer, and a mafia member. Chan would frequently go to this precise brothel specifically for Fan for her sex work services. One day after visiting Fan, Chan would notice that his wallet had been swiped from him, and inside of his wallet he had $4,000 in cash. Fan had stolen his wallet so that she could use the money to buy drugs to feed her addiction. When he later confronted Fan about the theft, he demanded that she not only pay him back the entire $4,000 in full, but he was adding interest. Somehow, Fan managed to scrape together the $4,000 that she had stolen and returned that to Chan. However, she begged him for more time so that she could try and scrape together the money for the interest that he had added on. This is when Chan came up with a horrific plan. He enlisted the help of 2 of his fellow mafia members, Lung Jingcho and Lung Wei Lun. He enlisted these 2 men to kidnap Fan, which they did. They dragged her out of the middle of the street and took her to an abandoned, dingy apartment. Chan's plan was to force Fan to do sex work from this apartment, and any money or any payment that she received for her services would go to him to pay off the debt. On that first night inside of the apartment, Fan would be tied up, beaten, and then repeatedly R-worded by all 3 of the men all night long. This went on for hours. Over the course of the next month, Fan would be sadistically tortured, but not just by these 3 men, also by the young girl who would later go to the police, and at the time that this young girl is participating, she is only 13 years old. Fan would be beaten, punched, struck with weapons, and kicked in the head, sometimes 50 times in a row. She would be burned, sustaining burns to the bottom of her feet so that it was unlikely that she was able to escape. She would have hot plastic and hot wax melted onto her. She would be starved and forced to drink and eat her own feces, and much, much more. In April 1999, after going out for a meal together, the 4 perpetrators would return back to the apartment, and that is where they would find the body of 23-year-old Fan Manier. She was dead. Her body would be dragged into the bathroom where, using a butcher's knife, the men would dismember her. In order to prevent the smell of death or decomposition, after dismembering Fan, the men would boil her remains on the stove inside of a big pot. And sometimes they were even cooking their own dinner on the same stove, so in one pot there's remains and in another pot there's noodles. Once the muscle and fat had boiled off of the bones, the men would then dispose of them in the regular bins. This happened for most of the remains, all apart from her head. After decapitating Fan and boiling her head, her skull would then be placed inside of a Hello Kitty mermaid doll and stitched back up. Almost as if the perpetrators wanted to keep it as a trophy inside of somewhere that they could carry around with them, inside of somewhere that no one would think to look. After having nightmares about what she saw and allegedly being haunted by the ghost of Fan Manier, that 14-year-old girl walked into the police station and told them everything, implicating all 3 of the men, Chan Man Lok, Lung Xing Cho and Lung Mei Lun. At their trial, however, they would be convicted of manslaughter and not murder. This is because they had dismembered Fan's body and boiled away at her remains, so the pathologist who conducted or tried to conduct her autopsy couldn't say for 100% certainty that she had in fact been a victim of a murder. 3 men claimed that she worked for them as a sex worker and she had taken an overdose, and all that they'd done was try and get rid of her remains. All 3 of the men will be handed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years to serve. One of the perpetrators, Xing Cho, would be released in 2014. However, in 2022, he was sent back to prison after SAing a 10-year-old girl. As part of a plea deal in exchange for her testimony against the 3 men, the 14-year-old girl was let off and was able to walk free.
Almost a year ago, on April 16th, 2023, Mercedes was texting 2 friends to make plans to either go out to dinner or go to an arcade. She sent her last text to them at 8:54 before she headed to her car in her apartment complex parking garage. There is this surveillance footage of Mercedes in her parking garage. She doesn't look on edge. She's looking down at her phone, completely unaware of what would happen next. This surveillance footage has been trimmed down by police before they released it because this is when 22-year-old Mercedes was attacked. At 1 a.m., law enforcement was notified that a burning car was on the side of the highway, and inside the car was Mercedes' body. Throughout this case, law enforcement has been so uncooperative with Mercedes' friends and family, it actually took them 6 months after the autopsy was done to find out how their loved one passed away, and it is disturbing and devastating. Mercedes had been shot in her arm and had severe blunt force trauma to her head, and these last 2 details are going to be really hard for me to say, and I'm sure hard for you guys to hear, but smoke was found in Mercedes' lungs, meaning that she was alive when she was left in that burning vehicle and burned alive, and also bleach was found in her throat. People have theorized maybe they put bleach in her mouth to conceal DNA, if maybe she tried to bite the people that were attacking her. People have also thought maybe this is symbolic. Maybe they unalived Mercedes because she said something she wasn't supposed to. The car that Mercedes' body was found in was not Mercedes' car. Mercedes' car was found abandoned behind a restaurant in Tempe, Arizona, even though we know that her car was in her apartment complex parking garage the day that she passed away. This is so frustrating, but the details of the car that Mercedes' body was found in has never been released to the public or even her family. Like, what? I feel like this would be like a slam dunk to solve this case. Even if they can't find out who this car belonged to, maybe the public could. Most people believe that multiple people were involved in the unaliving of Mercedes, that Mercedes was targeted, and this was a planned attack. But, and I think this is actually the most important detail of this case, how did the people know that attacked Mercedes and were waiting in her parking garage know that she'd be going to the parking garage at that exact moment? Well, Is it possible that Mercedes was actually set up by the two friends that she was texting about going out together only moments before she was attacked? Reportedly, she was texting them up until 8:54 p.m. and she was attacked at 9:15 p.m. They had plans. They were supposed to meet somewhere, but they never followed back up with her with a text until hours later. And maybe this is just me, but if me and my bestie Slither had dinner plans and she was only even a few minutes late, I would be blowing up her phone. I find it so hard to believe that with all the cameras in Tempe, Arizona, the car, her friends, that the investigators don't have a person of interest, but they have been completely silent to the public and her own family in the 11 months since this happened. At the beginning of this video, I told you that I would share ways that you could help Mercedes' family in their fight for justice. Well, they have a GoFundMe. They're trying to raise money for a reward for information. I know that not everyone can afford to donate, but I can. I would like to make a donation with the money I make off of this video. If you are able to donate, I have their GoFundMe linked in the link tree in my bio, but if you are unable to donate, please help boost this video. Please share it, like it, comment, anything that you can. Also, Mercedes' loved ones have an Instagram for her. I have it on the screen right now. If you guys could go over there, maybe show them some love and support as my community, that would really mean the world. Also, if you're from the Arizona area, they're planning a peaceful protest on April 17th. All the details are over on their Instagram. I know that this has been a longer video than I usually post on here. If you watch to end this video, thank you so much for listening to Mercedes Vega's story.
If it wasn't for the abduction and murder of Amber Hamburgen, who was only 9 years old, the Amber Alert system would have never existed. This little girl had just celebrated her 9th birthday when she was abducted and later found unalive without any clothes on. Amber was left alone in a Winn-Dixie parking lot riding her bike until a man sped into the lot in a truck, ran out of his car, and grabbed Amber so tightly her kicks and screams were not enough to escape his grip. An elder man who lived right across the street from the Winn-Dixie parking lot witnessed it all. Her screams and tears echoed the entire lot, but unfortunately he was just too slow to react and help Amber. He does the only good thing he can think of and immediately calls 911, terrified of what he just saw. You're probably questioning, how does a 9-year-old end up alone in a Winn-Dixie parking lot? I don't know about y'all, but I'm not letting my baby be left alone in no city. Right before she was abducted, Amber's mom, Donna, and her 5-year-old brother, Ricky, had gotten to their grandparents' house and immediately wanted to go bike riding. Her mom said, okay, but do not go far. The Winn-Dixie parking lot ended up being 1 block further from where they were supposed to go. Ricky told Amber, I want to leave. Mommy said we can't be here, but Amber said she was going to stay because she wanted to ride her bike a little longer, promising Ricky that she would be right behind him. So he leaves, but her promise was not fulfilled. When Ricky got back to the house, no more than 2 minutes away, his grandpa said, I'll pick up Amber. It isn't really safe to send him back there to get his sister alone. When he got to the lot, he couldn't see Amber, but instead he saw a cop talking to the elder man who lived right across the street and Amber's bike on the floor. He goes up to the cop and asks them, where is my grandbaby? Why is her bike here, but Amber is not? And that's when they told him, your child has been abducted. If I ever get told my child or grandchild has been abducted, that's it. My heart has been ripped out my chest. Now he has to drive back home and tell his daughter, Donna, that her daughter has been abducted. Arlington, Texas is known to be a very safe rural area, so Donna's like, how is that even possible? She was gone no more than 10 minutes. This mom speeds into the parking lot, screaming for her daughter with fear in each yell, but Amber is nowhere to be found. Police had learned from the witness that the man who took Amber was no more than 6 feet tall, in his mid-20s or 30s, dark hair, and either white or Hispanic. Within 1 hour, police searched all surrounding areas for a black pickup truck and any man who fit that description, but nothing turned up. Amber's family immediately started hanging up missing posters with her picture and description, hoping that it can reach anybody who sees it. Because remember, technology was not as advanced back then, so they didn't have the luxury of sending out a notification or checking the news apps like we do today. After 2 days of restless searching for missing 9-year-old Amber, doing air searches, ground searches, all searches, nothing was showing up. No one knows where she can be, and with each agonizing minute, Donna, a horrified, probably hasn't slept in days mother, just has to sit and wait, hoping that her child isn't hungry, scared, or alone. Now been 4 days since Amber has been missing, and a man is walking along a creek with his dog, only 4 miles from where she was missing, and he looks down and he sees something. He goes over to check, and that is when he sees that it is a body of a little girl with nothing on her except for one sock. It was not long until police identified the body as Amber Hagerman. Her body was just put there not even 3 or 4 hours before because a couple workers nearby were just at the creek and there was nobody there. Police were thinking, okay, maybe her body had washed up due to the high waters in the creek, but because of this, any physical evidence that could have been used to determine where she was or who had did this washed away. Amber's body was sent to a medical examiner, and that is when they found out that although she was missing for 4 days, she was already gone 2 days after her abduction. This just breaks my heart to say, but that means when Amber's terrified mom was searching everywhere for her baby, praying that she would come home, Amber was already gone. As Amber was held captive for the first 2 days, she was being tortured and SA'd at the hands of her abductor, and that is terrifying. Everyone in the community was so angry and devastated by this, especially because there was still a 2-day window that Amber was alive and could have been saved. Missing poster signs were not enough. It didn't reach enough people, and it did not reach all the people. A woman who lived in their area named Diane, who was also a mother, called into a local radio station expressing her anger and devastation about the murder and abduction of Amber. She had this gut-wrenching feeling that Amber could have and should have been saved, so she offered an idea to police enforcement. Since surrounding areas already receive alerts for weather and civil defense events, why couldn't we also get alerts for child abductions like Amber? Everyone completely agreed with her, and she called this idea Amber's Plan in honor of Amber. But after law enforcement and broadcasters partnered up, they would rename this idea as what we know today, Amber Alert. This stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. As of 2024, Amanda Hagerman's case is still unsolved, but because of her, she has solved many cases in America of other abducted children. As I always say, please be safe and watch your surroundings because you never know who's watching you or your loved ones.
This is the story of Kimora Hodges. Kimora Hodges was born in Michigan, but it's not any information about her life, her childhood. But when she was 20 years old in March of 2022, she had moved into an apartment with her boyfriend in Roseville, Michigan. And about a month later in April, 18-year-old single mother Taylor Starks moved into the apartment below Kimora with her 1-year-old child, Kyrie Starks. And with the two being in close proximity, they started to greet each other. They started conversing. Eventually, the two became friends. Taylor was a waitress at a restaurant nearby, and sometimes she would need a babysitter, and she asked Kimora if she could watch baby Kyrie sometimes, and she agreed. Kimora became Kyrie's primary babysitter. So on June 13th, 2022, Taylor dropped him off before clocking in for her evening shift, just like any other night. But this night was different. Kimora was very impatient with Kyrie this night, to the point where she started texting Taylor crazy text messages saying that Kyrie is being sneaky, you're too soft on him. And then she just blatantly said, you know what? I don't even want to babysit him anymore. Agitated by the child's behavior, she violently shakes Kyrie and throws him forcefully up against a wall, and then does nothing for a period of time because she thinks he's okay, until she noticed that his breathing became abnormal. Kyrie had started to twitch, and instead of calling 911, she's pacing back and forth to think of a story to tell Taylor. She then took a picture of Kyrie and sent it to Taylor, saying that he ate some soap and he's having an allergic reaction. When Taylor got this picture, she seen that her baby's face was swollen and his head was swollen. She immediately stopped everything she was doing and rushed over to their apartment. Now, when she got there, baby Kyrie was on the floor having seizure after seizure after seizure. On top of his ears were bleeding. Kimora stood up and said, he doesn't look normal. Bitch. The two dialed 911 and Kyrie was rushed to the hospital. Now, when they got to the hospital, the doctor immediately knew that this was not an allergic reaction. Kyrie had to undergo emergency brain surgery because of the extensive bleeding in his brain. Both of the blood vessels in his eyes were busted, His ear canals were actively bleeding. Kimora was arrested that same morning, and during questioning, she told the detectives that that was not supposed to happen. Y'all just want me to blame. Y'all just want me to say I took my anger out on him, and that's not what I did. But then she went on to say, maybe I hit him too hard, but I didn't take my anger out on him. She was held on a $250K bond, but that would change if Kyrie did not make it. It wasn't until June 22nd, 8 days later, after being on life support and showing zero brain activity, 1-year-old Kyrie Starks passed away just 1 month shy of his second birthday. This upped her charges to first-degree felony murder, and Taylor cooperated with the prosecutors and was willing to give her a plea deal for second-degree murder, but she declined. Kimora wanted to fight the charges, and her trial didn't start for another 3 years. In July of 2025, she stood up and apologized for prolonging the trial. She said, I am sorry for prolonging this, but I just want to fight for my life and prove that I am not what those charges say I am. Well, baby, you should have took that plea deal because the judge handed down the maximum, mandatory life without the possibility of parole for felony murder. 15 to 40 years for the first degree child abuse charge. This was a quick case. It wasn't a lot on this, but this just shows you how quickly your life can change when you can't control your actions, your emotions. Her life gone in a blink of an eye. R.I.P. to baby Kyrie. When I was watching Taylor's interview, she said that she didn't have no mother or no father. She said that Kyrie was the only thing she had, and that was sad. Yellow tape. What y'all think?
We need to talk about this. Why are so many young men's bodies found in water? Obviously, I'm making this video after the tragic news that came out earlier today that Riley Strain was the body that was found in the Cumberland River on Friday. If you're not already familiar with Riley Strain's case, I have a recent video on my profile. Well, the discovery of Riley Strain's body has sparked a discussion about maybe a connection with the smiley face killer conspiracy theory. Quick disclaimer, this video is only meant for education and theorizing purposes. I am not saying that Riley Strain was a victim of foul play, and there is no evidence that he was a victim of foul play. If you don't already know about the smiley face killer conspiracy theory, well, there's a huge online conspiracy theory that there is a group of unknown and uncaught serial killers that target men that are usually white, college-aged, and privileged. These men are usually go missing after a night of drinking and are later found in or near bodies of water where there's a smiley face painted nearby. The potential victims of this serial killer group go back as late as the 90s, and at least 45 men's deaths have been linked to this theory. Many of these men are not found for weeks or even months after they go missing, and their bodies usually look more like a body that has been dead for only a couple hours or a couple of days, not weeks or months. If you want to know more about this theory, because I'm not going to go too in depth in this video, you can either click here or here, because I did a video a while ago on it. I've gotten a lot of comments recently about a potential link to Riley Strain, especially after the discovery of his body. He does match the victim description, and the details of the case do align with the MO with the other victim, so I understand why people are connecting it to it. I do find it really strange that it took them 8 days to find his body, especially with how public this case got. If you're interested, let me know in the comments, because I've been wanting to make a video on more potential victims of the smiley face killers, because some of those cases are just wild. To end this video, I really quickly want to say that my heart truly goes out to Riley Strain's friends, families, anyone that loved him. I could not even begin to imagine what you guys are going through, and I'm deeply sorry. And I want you guys, as my audience, as my followers, and the people who are watching this video, to be able to theorize in the comments. That is okay, but please remember that these are real people and real people's lives, and at least just please be respectful in the comments. With that being said, please let me know all your thoughts and theories in the comments. You guys are always coming up with comments and connections to these cases that I would never think of personally. I'll be reading all my comments. I truly read every single one that comes in and be commenting to as many as I can.
This is the story of Lamora Williams. 24-year-old Lamora was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. As a child, she had behavioral difficulties as well as learning. Her mother said that she was a slow learner to the point where her mother pulled her out of school in an attempt to homeschool her. But that didn't work either. Lamora's sister said that she would always show alarming behaviors. She used to decapitate their Barbie dolls. She would also try to harm herself, like cutting her wrists. Their mother repeatedly tried to contact Georgia Social Services and school boards to get a psychiatric evaluation, but they will always say nothing is wrong. So this left her mental illness untreated, undiagnosed. In 2013, Lamora met Jamel Penn, and the two began an on and off again unhealthy ass relationship. They went on to have 3 children. She was pregnant every year after that, 2014, 2015, and 2016. But in 2014, Lamora's father passed, and from what I read, that was her everything, her rock. And when he passed, it took a major toll on her mental. In 2015, one of Lamora's neighbors reported that she would leave her infant children in the apartment alone for an extended period of time. And some of those times, she would be at work. And mind you, Lamora had a child when she was just 18 years old. But one of her family members took the child because they felt she couldn't take care of her. Around 2017, Lamora gets pregnant again, but this pregnancy ends in a traumatic miscarriage. And shortly after that, Jamel calls it quits on the relationship. And that was the last straw for Lamora. Suffering from severe postpartum depression and paranoia, Lamora just completely cut off her family. No contact. She wasn't answering the phone. She wasn't answering the door. And she would not let Jamel see his sons. Towards the end of that same year, Lamora just up and quits her job. She was overwhelmed. She was depressed. She couldn't get consistent childcare. And her family made several attempts to Division of Family and Children's Services because they didn't know the state of the children. They wanted custody. They wanted somebody to go out there to see what was going on with the kids, but nothing never happened. On October 12th, 2017, shortly after midnight, Lamora snaps. She put 1-year-old Jakarta and 2-year-old Keontae inside of a kitchen oven and turned it on while her 3-year-old watched. Now, it's unclear how long the two were in the oven, but long enough to die from severe dry heat thermal trauma. It wasn't until around 11 p.m. on October 13th, almost 24 hours later, she's been in the apartment with her deceased sons for almost 24 hours with a 3-year-old who's still alive. She FaceTimed Jamel and didn't say nothing, just pointed the camera at their 2 deceased children. They were laying on the kitchen floor. And Jamel is distraught. He can't even believe his eyes. He immediately hung up and dialed 911. He told the dispatcher, "I just talked to my child's mother. My 2 sons are on the floor. I really think they're dead." That's when Lamora finally decided to dial 911. Mind you, she called a friend first. But when she did call 911, she told the dispatchers that she had just walked in and seen her youngest son on the floor with the stove on his head, and her other son was laid out on the floor, and his brains was also laid out on the floor. And she said, "What should I do? I just got home from work. I don't want to go to jail. This is not my fault." She's saying all this calmly. She's not frantic at all. When the police arrived, they immediately noticed the inconsistencies in Lamora's story. Yes, the oven was tipped over, but the deep tissue burns in those babies' bodies was not adding up to what she was saying. She was taken down for further questioning, and she told the police that her cousin Maisha was the one that was watching her son while she was at work, but she couldn't prove it. She couldn't prove Maisha was at her apartment. And also, you just quit your job. You didn't think that they was going to check there? On top of her cell phone pinged at her apartment all day. She was charged with felony murder, malice murder, child cruelty, and aggravated assault. She still said that she was not guilty. Now, Lamora's trial proceedings lay dormant for several years because the judge didn't feel like she was competent to stand trial. He ordered several rounds of independent psychiatric evaluations. The pandemic also hit while all this was going on. In June of 2023, at the final plea hearing to push the trial, Lamora wouldn't even step in the courtroom to face the judge to finalize everything. After 7 long years, her trial finally started in November of 2024, and her defense team was trying to push her mental illness, the history of her mental, but that wasn't nothing compared to that evidence. The autopsy evidence showed that both boys' heads and bodies suffered from catastrophic prolonged exposure to dry heat, which means they couldn't have gotten those injuries from an oven being tipped over. On November 15th, 2024, Lamora Williams was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 35 years. I was tagged in this story a lot, and when I read this, I stopped everything to dig a little deeper into this, because this was some sick ass shit. And I'm not saying that she does not have mental issues, but good God, you put your 2 children in the oven, turn them on, sat with those 2 deceased children for almost a day, took them out of the oven, placed them on the floor, tipped the oven over to make it look like the oven fell on them. All of this while your 3-year-old is there. Do you know how fucked up you gotta be? Yellow tape. Why y'all tag me in this?
The house of one of the most horrific murders is set to be demolished at the end of this month before a trial has even taken place. And if you think that that's a horrible decision, there's now a petition that you can sign to hopefully stop that from happening. The demolition of 1122 King Road is set to begin on December 28th. It's the off-campus rental home in Moscow, Idaho, where 4 University of Idaho students were brutally stabbed to death in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The victims were roommates Kaylee Gonzalez, her childhood best friend Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, who happened to be staying the night with her that night. Brian Koberger, who was at the time studying for his PhD in criminology at Washington State University, was arrested and charged with the murders 6 weeks later at his family's home in Pennsylvania. This demolition date comes less than a year after Brian's arrest and before a trial date has even been set. It was just released that prosecutors are now asking for the trial date to be set sometime in the summer of 2024. But as of right now, no official trial date has been set. As far as the demolition, there are many people, including some of the victims' families, that think this is a horrible idea. The King Roadhouse was donated to the University of Idaho earlier this year, and according to the school, they want the house to be torn down before students arrive back to the campus in hopes of trying to move on. The president of the school has recently released this statement saying, quote, "It is a grim reminder of the heinous act that took place there. While we appreciate the emotional connection that some family members of the victims may have to this house, it's time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community to continue." End quote. A memorial garden titled Vandal Healing Garden and Memorial is planned to take the place of the crime scene and is currently being designed by architecture students at the university. But many professionals, as well as some of the victims' family members, question why they would tear down the house and destroy the single most important piece of evidence before the trial has even started. Most understand that the house is an eyesore, but walking the jury through the crime scene is extremely important, and it gives them a perspective that photos just can't do. Although the FBI and Brian Koberger's lawyers have returned to the house multiple times to take photos and create 3D maps of the house, some argue that it would severely hinder the outcome of this case without the jury even having the option to walk through the crime scene. The family of Kaylee Gonzalez recently posted this on their Facebook page in regards to the news about the demolition, and they've also shared the exact petition, so I'll include that in my bio as well. Along with that, their attorney released this statement on Friday, which is very powerful. I won't read all of this for you, you can pause to read if you need to, but I do want to read the parts that stand out to me and that everyone should hear. Their attorney states, quote, "Let us ask this. Isn't it better to have the King Roadhouse and not need it than need the house and not have it? It is obvious from the 2 recent visits to the house by both the prosecution and the defense that there is still evidentiary value in having the King Roadhouse still standing. The family has stressed tirelessly the importance that the King Roadhouse carries, but nobody seems to care enough. It's like screaming into a void. Victims' families have a voice, and they should be heard and listened to." End quote. Like I said, I've linked the petition in my bio, but I really urge all of you to please go and sign it. I don't know exactly what the outcome will be, but the least we can do is stand with the victims' families and support them on this. To recap the case, in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, one of the surviving roommates on the second floor, who I'll refer to as DM, woke up around 4 a.m. and heard what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog Murphy in one of the bedrooms on the third floor of the house. DM heard who she thought was Kaylee yelling "Someone's here," and a short while later she heard crying coming from Xana's room, which was just down the hall from her on the second floor. DM then heard a man's voice saying, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," end quote. And when she opened her bedroom door, she saw a tall man with bushy eyebrows, dressed in all black and wearing a mask, leave through the sliding glass door of the house. Police were called the next day around noon. Maddie and Kaylee were found deceased, both in Maddie's bed on the third floor, while Ethan and Xana were both found in her room on the second floor. They all suffered multiple stab wounds, and at least 2 of the victims had severe defensive wounds. From this, investigators pieced together DNA evidence, cell phone data, and surveillance footage that they say links Brian Kohberger to the murders. The DNA evidence comes from a knife sheath found under Maddie's body that showed a statistical match with a cheek swab taken directly from Brian after his arrest. Brian's white Hyundai Elantra was also caught on surveillance footage driving by the victims' homes 3 times before finally parking outside of the victims' homes at 4:04 the morning of the murders. Authorities traced the car back to Pullman, Washington, where it was identified as belonging to Brian. Along with that, Brian's cell phone pinged in the vicinity of the King Road home 12 times prior to the murders, as far back as August, and then once again the morning after the murders. But while his phone did ping in the area before and after the murders, it was turned off from 2:47 to 4:48 a.m., leaving those hours during the murders technically unaccounted for. His alibi, if you can even call it that, was that he just likes to drive around a lot, and that specific night he was just out driving alone. According to Kaylee's dad, before the gag order earlier this year, one of the lead investigators on the case told them that they believed Brian had been scouting out the house. The murder weapon, which is reportedly a K-bar knife, has never been recovered. But according to now unsealed search warrant documents, investigators combed through Brian's record of Amazon purchases and basically anything pertaining to knives and similar accessories. And if prosecutors can somehow link Brian to the purchase of a K-bar knife possibly used in the quadruple murder, it could significantly help their case. Brian has since been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, and Latah County intends to seek the death penalty. So like I said, prosecutors are now requesting that the trial begin sometime in the summer of 2024, but as of this point, a trial date has not been set. But whenever this case does go to trial, the courtroom will host a live stream which will be available on its YouTube channel. Justice for Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin.
A transcript of the 911 call has been released. Let's talk about it. First of all, though, a reminder that this is true crime, emphasis on the word true, because these are true stories, real cases, real families. Throughout the investigation of this case, as any other, there are families grieving the loss of a loved one, and that includes the 2 surviving roommates. They are also hurting, so please just remember to be kind and respectful always. But let's get into it. I did post a full rundown of the case back in July 23rd of 2024, so if you want to go listen to the entire thing, it's back then. It was posted back then. But here's a quick recap. On November 13th of 2022, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison, Maddie Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin lost their lives. That crime scene has to be one of the most gruesome that I've ever looked into, leaving investigators to this day still having nightmares. Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana were roommates at the University of Idaho. Ethan was Xana's boyfriend. He was sleeping over at their house at night. By 2 in the morning, all of them were home, but they would not wake up to see another day. It is believed that their lives were ended sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. A suspect described as a male figure in black clothing and a black mask, around 5'10" or taller, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows, was seen walking out of their residence that night. The person who saw the suspect and described him to authorities was one of the 2 surviving roommates. The 2 surviving roommates are Dylan and Bethany. At 11:58 a.m. the next morning, 7 hours after the murders have believed to have taken place, police receive a 911 call reporting someone was unconscious at the residence 1122 King Road. Police arrive to find the brutal crime scene and 4 deceased victims. Their deaths are immediately ruled a homicide by stabbing. 6 weeks and 5 days after the murders, 28-year-old Brian Kohberger, a criminology graduate student, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. Now, some of the biggest points of conversation when all of this came out was, first of all, why were there 4 people brutally murdered in such a horrific manner that the coroner described the injuries to be more like tears rather than stabs? What the fuck was the motive for such a crime of passion? Secondly, why and how were the 2 other roommates in that house left completely unharmed? Why was the 911 call not made until 7 hours later? And the one that we're going to be focusing on today, why was the 911 call reporting someone unconscious instead of reporting what was a clear, vicious homicide? So the night of the crime, the 2 surviving roommates were home, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, one of them lived in the basement, the other surviving roommate lived on the first floor. Xana and Ethan were found on the second floor, and Kaylee and Maddie were found on the third floor. Text messages between the 2 surviving roommates have been unsealed. Dylan was the one who allegedly saw the suspect walking through the house. She attempted to call Bethany, Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, and Ethan between 4:19 and 4:24 a.m. All calls went unanswered. Dylan and Bethany were texting between 4:22 and 4:24 a.m. Dylan says, "No one is answering. I'm really confused right now." Bethany says, "Yeah, dude, WTF. Xana was wearing all black." Dylan says, "I'm freaking out right now. No, it's like a ski mask almost, like he had something over his head and over his mouth. I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out." Bethany says, "So am I." And then Bethany says, "Come to my room, run." So obviously they were texting about someone being in the house. We know from a previous statement that around 4 in the morning, Dylan thought that she heard something that sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs, and what sounded like someone saying, "There's someone here." She woke up, she opened the door and didn't see anything. Then she heard what sounded like crying coming from Xana's room and a male voice saying something along the lines of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She got up, opened the door, saw nothing. The third time she opened her door, she saw the suspect, the male figure dressed in all black, walking out of the sliding back door. She was frozen in shock, locked her door, and stayed inside for the rest of the night, as far as we know. At 10:23 the next morning, Dylan texts Kaylee and Maddie asking if they're awake. Sometime later, 2 of their roommates' friends come over. I read that one of the friends found Xana unresponsive and told Bethany and Dylan to call 911. On the 911 call, there are 2 girls and 4 guys talking. The dispatcher also described as hearing heavy breathing and crying. And you can tell there are multiple people on the call because the dispatcher keeps stating that one person has to speak because too many people were speaking at once and she was trying to get the address. When the dispatcher answered the call and said, "What's your emergency?" the person says, quote, "Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. We have ... They're trying to give the address. The phone gets passed around and then someone says, quote, "One of the roommates who's passed out and she was last night, she's not waking up. No, we saw, oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah," end quote. And then someone goes, "Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?" And the dispatcher goes, "What is going on currently? Is there someone passed out right now?" The person answers, "I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. And the dispatcher says, "Okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out, can you find that out?" Then there's people talking and someone says, we gotta go check, but we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? She's not waking up. The phone keeps getting passed around until officers arrive, and then on the transcript it says, "Moscow 46 out. I think we have a homicide." I have questions, a lot of questions. What was that person gonna say that happened at 4 in the morning? What would they have said if the dispatcher was like, "Yeah, tell me"? Like they said pretty much at 4 a.m. What was the rest of that sentence? I need to know. And I wanna make it clear also, I'm not putting blame on anyone at all. This is no one's fault. Obviously, you never know how you're going to react in a situation such as this one, and I can imagine obviously during that 911 call it was chaos, so much was going on, but I guess I just don't really understand how you can call about someone being passed out, unconscious, or unresponsive. I don't get it. When there was blood pouring out of that house, there was so much blood that it poured out into the concrete outside of the house, and as soon as officers got there they said, "We have a homicide." And this is my opinion, I don't think that someone could have looked at the second floor or the third floor and said that we have a person unresponsive. That, I hate to say it just makes no sense. Were they just in shock? Did they not see them? Did they just assume that something happened so they called and said someone was unresponsive to make sure an ambulance was sent out? But why would they know they needed an ambulance if they didn't see them? And if they did, why did they only say unresponsive if they did see them? I feel like there's a piece to the puzzle missing. We talked about all the DNA evidence that was found in the initial video that I made about it, and we went more into details about Brian and his whole story. But since then, prosecutors have claimed they have DNA evidence tying Brian to the crime scene and are seeking the death penalty if convicted. However, we have also recently learned that allegedly there was a 3-person mixture of unknown DNA found under Madison Mogen's fingernails. Detectives who investigated the homicides found blood at the crime scene from 2 still unidentified males. So not just 1 person, 3 people now allegedly, which Brian's defense team, I'm sure, is going to really be using in their argument. Brian's attorneys have made it clear that they question the accuracy of the DNA testing and they have asked for the death penalty to be taken off the table. Another big thing with the DNA, the house was torn burned down. It's gone, which is crazy considering that it was probably filled with evidence, DNA evidence. So I don't know how that choice was made. I guess they just took all the evidence they needed, but that was kind of really fast. Prosecutors have said the FBI is building a 3D model of the King Road home that would be used for demonstrative purposes to aid the witnesses in their testimony at trial. It still seems rather fast to take the house down before the trial, in my opinion, but I'm no lawyer. I know nothing about law. As of now, Brian's trial is expected to begin August 11th after a few more scheduled pre-trial hearings. I'm sure so much more information is going to come out until then, but I needed to get this video up because I want to know what you think. I'm just so confused about the 911 call, and I'm sure it is likely that some information might come out and we will all be like, oh, that makes a lot more sense, because sometimes things like that do happen when we are so quick to assume that things happened the way they did, and then we learn new details about the case and we're like, oh, that's why that happened. Whatever the case may be, I guess we will find out. Let me know your thoughts on it. And that's all from me today. Thank you for spending time with me today, and I will see you in my next video. I hope you guys are all having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, be kind, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.